Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we are going to look at Reddit's perception of bounce for the Bandle City expansion. First thing to say is, of course, a big thank you to Panda for doing these things. I find these things really interesting, and so yeah, this is going to be an interesting video, and of course, some of the things that I'm about to say you will agree with, some things that I say you will definitely disagree with, and so, leave a comment on what you think about this, but I think that this is just a really interesting insight to, what do the people think? How are we all viewing the game as of right now? And so with that said, let's dive in. And the first thing we will look at is the regional power level. So here we have all of the different regions in the game, and the rating is from 1 to 5, which I believe it is for all of these things. And Panda, I think, breaks it down as like, between like 2 and 4 is kind of like it's okay, and then above 4 is like it's a problem, and below 2 is like it's a problem. And so with that in mind, let's break down the regions. So we have Bandle City coming in at the top, obviously the newest region coming in right at the top. Then Noxus pretty close behind, and Shrima just behind that. Then a bit of a gap to Piltover and Zorn, Bilgewater, Ionia, and Shadow Isles, all kind of bunched up a bit together. Then a bit lower is Demacia, and then a bit lower is Freljord, and then even lower, as you can see, all the way down at a 1.83 is Targon. So takeaways from this are quite interesting, because overall I'd say I kind of agree somewhat with where like the positions are. The one thing that I would say though, like just a takeaway from the whole list, is I would bunch them up a bit more than they currently are. Like I don't think Bandle City is this good. And I think this is a theme that people must really think that like the Bandle tree decks are like super OP. Because it kind of becomes a bit of a theme with like, later on. But I don't personally think that that is the case, but that seems to be what people seem to think. And I would say that, Bandle City is pretty good. I agree that this is probably the top 3. I kind of agree that this is like the middle 4, and that this is kind of like the bottom 3. But I would definitely have them more bunched closer together. I don't think I'd have like this big of a shift. And the one that I probably disagree with most is actually Targon. Targon is definitely not a 1.83 in my opinion. I don't know if people just, I think this is one of those things where people like, someone says that Targon's bad, and then everyone just jumps on the bandwagon of Targon must be really bad. But obviously we see Targon be played in one of the best decks currently in Nami Zoe. And honestly, I think if you just, like, I was watching Lobster, I think, play some, like, Invoke decks yesterday, and he was doing pretty well with it. And, I think if you play, like, a Targon Invoke deck, you'd probably actually do pretty well right now. Obviously, Targon got hit hard with some, like, nerfs in succession, right? With, like, Pale Cascade is probably where it started. And then Aphelios, and then Veiled Temple, and all of those. Nerfs to like the Serpent or whatever, but I think honestly I find it a bit baffling, if I'm being honest with you, because I think Targon, as I say, you'll do pretty well right now. Like Hush is really good against like Nami Zoe elusives, of course, like hushing their big Sparklefly and just killing it is pretty good, or like hushing Scion is pretty good. So I don't really understand that much. And then like for Bandletree, you can get like the Comet and obliterate the Bandletree. Like there seems to be a lot of options for Targon actually at the moment, to deal with quite a few different things. So I don't know. As I say, it's probably just because people like are jumping on the bandwagon of Targon bad. When in reality, Targon I don't actually think is that bad. I probably would still put it at the lowest on the list, just because their champions are quite lackluster, like, Diana, Leona, Taric, Asol. I'm probably forgetting some. Aren't that great. And so I can understand why Targon would be down there. But I actually think the region as a whole, I mean, maybe you could use with like a buff or two. Like I think, maybe we could revert Pale Cascade back and give Targon sort of their big spell back to where it was. But other than that, like, Targon isn't that bad. Like, it really isn't that bad. And so I wasn't surprised to see it this far down, but I definitely don't think it's this bad. Targon, like, you know, I think literally if you reverted Pale Cascade, Targon would probably be like mid-table again. Like, literally. Because I think that this number is a lie anyway, and, you know, and I think Freljord is probably also a little low. And so, yeah, I think that really all of these are closer to 3 than this is the current case shown by the data. I'm going to skip over the thematic satisfaction because it kind of just follows the same, like, you know, if a region is good, people are happy with it kind of thing. So I'm going to skip over that and get to the champions rating. And here we have a rating for every single champion in the game. So we're going to go through, you know, some of the newer names and talk about what we think. So let's talk about the top 5 first. We have Siva, obviously, at the top, then Nami, Sion, Draven, and Poppy. And to me, this is a bit of a thing, because, like, the 3 here at the top are, like, you know, a bit ahead of, like, the next 2 in the top 5, and this to me is kind of odd, let's say, because I would also have a top 3, but it's not that top 3, and it wouldn't be in that order. Because my top 3 would probably go Draven, Siva, Nami. I don't really know what Sion is doing close to the top of this list, to be honest. I found that really, really surprising. But those would be my top 3 in that order. And then I would go Poppy, and then I would put Sion kind of with the Akshans of the world, I think. But that's just my opinion. I have no idea who is giving Draven less than a 4. How can you look at Draven? Because some people are giving him less than a 4. Very clearly they are. That to me is truly baffling. How a card that has dominated this game for like 9 months is not above a 4. I am shocked. I am truly, truly shocked by that. That is probably the most surprising thing on this entire list. I cannot believe that. But I think it actually follows a trend. And if you go through this list and like really look at it, it follows a trend, I think, of champions that kind of win the game. The ones that like you associate with, if they get that champion and it starts going off, they'll win the game. Tend to be overrated, I think. And champions that like just give you a lot of value anyway, like just from just their being, like they have a good summon effect or something like that. Those champions tend to be slightly underrated. For instance, Sion, in my opinion, should not be this high. Sion will win you games, but I think, you know, a lot of top level players have already sort of started to realize that, like, the Draven Caitlyn, like, more mid-rangey, I guess, kind of deck, like the true full mid-range list, is probably actually better than the Sion list. You know, and that's what, you know, people at the top, you know, very few people brought Sion to like the Worlds, and it's not because it's not a good deck, because it is a good deck. You know, and Sion would still be, I'm not saying that Sion, you know, should be mid-table. He'd still be a good champion. I just don't think that Sion needs a nerf or anything. I think Sion is fine. You know, he's just a good champion, which would probably put him closer to like a 3.75, right, is what I would have Sion as. But I do think there is a kind of overrating of champions that win games. Like Lee Sin is really, really high, right? Like, for how much you see Lee Sin, like, you would expect like this champion here, like rated this high, to be extremely high, right? But he's not. And I also think like cards like Akshan are slightly underrated. I actually probably would have Akshan like slightly higher than this. Because as I say, I feel like because a champion is just like a card that's kind of just good on its own, you know, that doesn't necessarily win you the game, like Akshan doesn't necessarily win you the game, just gives you quite a lot of value. The people, you know, kind of think, oh yeah, it's good, it's fine, it's whatever. And I assume that's what's happening to Draven and Akshan. And, you know, if we go further down the list as well, like, you know, champions that win you the game. Oh, Viego can win you the game. I have no idea what Viego is doing up here this high. This makes literally zero sense to me. But, you know, he is. Probably because he's one of those champions that, oh, this is a champion that can win you the game. He must be up there. Like, why is Zoe this low? You know, Zoe is much better than Viego. In my opinion, at least, like that's just obvious. But you know, if we continue to go down, you know, you've got champions like Misfortune and Twisted Fate down here, you know, below like the Pikes of the world. Like, I'm guessing that, you know, these people like have just had Pike kill their board once or twice, and that's causing them to, you know, think about that. But Misfortune has, like, you know, been really good in this game pretty much ever since she came out. And somehow she's only a 3.09. And Twisted Fate, who is still really, really good, is somehow a 2.93. This I just don't... Who's giving Twisted Fate a 2? Like, what people are giving Twisted Fate a 2? It makes no sense. I genuinely just can't believe that. Like, yes, he got nerfed. Yes, he isn't like a 5 anymore. He's like a 3.5. This is another one where I think it just proves the point that these champions that kind of, I mean, Misfortune can win you the game, and Twisted Fate can as well, but you know, just their level 1 forms that just kind of give you quite a bit of value tend to be underrated quite heavily, I think. And you know, champions that just end up winning the game for you tend to be like pushed up much higher than they actually should be. So you know, I do disagree. Like, obviously, everyone would go through this list and have, like, slight disagreements. But to me, the 3 champions that I would say, like, these champions need a nerf would be Draven, Sivir, and Nami. You know, pretty simple nerfs as well. Like, Draven, I would just take away the Summon Spinning X. Sivir, I would just revert her back to the old level up. And Nami, I would just make her level up a bit harder as well. And I think that, you know, that would solve most of the problems. And they aren't necessarily huge nerfs either. You know, and they'd be pretty simple. And then, like, on the watch list, I'd probably have, like, Poppy. You know, I think Poppy, like, is on that kind of, like, level of, you know, this is a really strong card. And shout out to me, I did say that when I first saw Poppy, she would be a top 5 champion. And look at this. Top 5. Pretty good. So, yeah, Poppy, you know, I'd put on the watch list. And then everyone else I'd probably say is, like, okay for now. And that those are the only ones that need changing. But let's go to the bottom of the list as well and look at our bottom 5 champions. No surprise for some of these, of course. We got Katarina, Lux, Kindred, Aphelios, and Quinn at the bottom. The bottom 4 I can definitely get on board with. I have no idea why people think Quinn is that bad. This has always shocked me. People, again, I think this is just like a bandwagon thing of, you know, someone said Quinn bad once, and everyone went, yeah, Quinn bad, Quinn bad, Quinn bad. I have no idea why that is the case. Like, how is Braum this high? Again, Braum doesn't even see play in, like, his own decks. Like, Scarground's decks, you know, quite a few of them don't run Braum. Poro decks don't run Braum. Like, Scouts always should run Quinn. Like, people have tried Poppy in Scouts, and, you know, Poppy is a really good card, so it can work, but I think most people, you know, that have played a lot of Scouts would probably still be like, yeah, well, Quinn should be in there in some form. Even if she's not a 3-off, she's definitely in there. So at least she makes her own deck. You know, whereas, you know, the ones down here with the rest, like this group, you know, doesn't even really make their own deck. And so I find that, you know, pretty shocking that Quinn is down here. Like, Quinn, like, if you want to look at the viability of these champions and look at how many tier 1 decks they've been. Obviously, Aphelios is a bit of a case where obviously he was insane and then got heavily nerfed. So, you know, take new Aphelios and then just look at the rest of this like list. How many of them have been in tier 1 decks? Well, Quinn has been there multiple times in tier 1 decks in the Scouts deck. And the rest are pretty much, you know, maybe Lux once upon a time. And then the rest, like, you're like, ooh, never. And you can, like, keep going up. And the one that you probably have to get to is, like, Darius. But then you can keep going up. Like, Darius was maybe once. And you can, like, how is Tristana all the way up here when Quinn is that far down? And you can just keep going up. And you're looking for, like, solid tier 1 decks, like, in their current form. And you can just keep going up. And keep going up. And maybe you can get to a Nivea again. It's like one, like, when you're trying to find the next champion on this list that has been in tier 1 decks, like, multiple times, like, very clearly multiple times. Maybe Fiora, but again, not in her current form. Maybe Trundle. Like, you have to go all the way up there, and somehow Quinn is down here. This is just another one that I find baffling. I don't understand, but again, I think it's just people jumping on the bandwagon if they look at Quinn and they think 5 mana 3/4 not good, but you do get Valor, and you still have like Scout is like Scout is one of the best keywords in the game. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise to me, but I'm sure plenty of you will disagree with those takes. Let's just quickly look at some of the new champions. Obviously, we've already touched on Nami, Scion, and Poppy, but let's just go down the list. So we have Senna here at 3.57, sorry. That seems a little high to me. I don't think the Senna is like that good. You know, she's fine. She's probably better off the top of my head than any of the others. I probably would have her as like the 4th of the new champions that came out, but this seems like a little high to me. In my personal opinion. Then Vinegar himself, Vigar, whatever he's called. I mean, I don't think Darkness is that good of a deck, I'll be honest. I don't know, I just don't think it's that good. So I would probably have both these a little lower than they are, but you know, that's just me. Then as we continue to go down, we have Caitlyn here at like a 2.91. I mean, that's probably fair. Seems about right. Then Ziggs at 2.76. Again, probably fair. I can probably get on board with that. And as we continue to go down, we got Zara. I actually think Zara is a bit better than this. I'll be honest. And I think Zillion is all the way down here. So clearly people haven't been playing like the Zillion Zara deck a lot, or don't know about it, because I think it's actually a pretty solid deck. Where both champions do like quite a lot of work for you. So I'm kind of surprised to see them that low. I'd probably have them both like quite a bit higher. Like Zillion is definitely better than Tristana. Tristana, I don't really know. Like she's not the worst champion in the game. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't put her at the very bottom, but I can definitely agree with a score this low. That seems about fair. I'd probably give her like a 2 out of 5. Overall. And I think that's all of the new champions. So yeah, that's a quick look at the new ones. Some very odd scores on this list. Again, I don't know who's rating Draven under a 4. I don't know who's rating Twisted Fate under a 3. Maybe they just don't play the game. I don't know. But that's just really weird to me. And so now we will look at the controversial cards. And I mentioned that like people must think that the Bandle tree deck is really insane. Because you can see the top of the list is Bandle City Mare, and that it was like, what? That shocked me, because I have not really seen anyone be like, nerf Bandle City Mare, nerf Bandle City Mare. You know, normally if a card like is this good, normally you would see like quite a few like calls for this card definitely needs a nerf. This whole list, to be honest, is a bit weird. And I'll get into it. So Bandle City Mare, I don't know, like it's a good, like don't get me wrong, it's a good card. Like I'm not saying it's not a good card. It's a really good card, but as I say, I haven't heard anyone calling for nerfs for it, and it's like, to me, it's just like a strong card. Like that's it. I don't even know what to say really. Like to me, it's just a strong card. Like it's fine. Like it's just a fine, strong card that, you know, and helps Bandletree exist, and that's fine. Then Aloof Travelers, another card that I'm, again, shocked that this card is up here. This, like, Aloof Travelers, I do not think is nerf worthy. Like, it's a fine card. Don't get me wrong, it's fine. But it's not, like, and by fine, I mean, like, it's a good, strong card, right? I mean that, like, it's a strong card. But, like, above a 4 is, like, nerf worthy. And I do not think that this card is nerf worthy. And then we start, weirdly, getting into the cards that, you know, are just below the nerf-worthy threshold that, like, 100% do need a nerf. Like, Lost Soul is has to be nerfed. Like, the card has to be nerfed. Like, significantly nerfed. Like, the way I would fix Lost Soul is literally take Challenger away from the 4/3 that you get from Lost Soul. Like, this card has to be changed. I don't understand how people are looking at like Aloof Travelers and Bandle City Mare. People are clearly giving these cards like 5 out of 10, which is odd. That's just weird to me. But Lost Soul, like, is a card that has to be changed. The card is crazy, like just insane. Like, the value that that card, like, having that one card in your hand at the start of a game will have decided so many games for, like, those discard decks. Like, so many games will be decided about, did you find Lost Soul, and did you, have this constant barrage of just infinite discard targets for your deck. And then you get a 4/3 challenger for the price of having to discard your card. Just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, and I have no idea. I have no idea why people are sleeping on this card. I don't know. Maybe because, the deck where it really flourishes, which is probably Caitlyn Draven rather than, a Scion deck. That's why this card really flourishes. But as I said, I think top level players have sort of started to move away from Scion and gone more towards this because they've recognized that Lost Soul is a broken card. Like, completely broken. And so I have no idea why this card is third on this list. I thought it would be number 1 100%, but it wasn't. So anyway, at least it's high on the list, right? Like, it's close to nerf worthy, and so at least people are recognizing that, I suppose. And then we get to Fleet Admiral Shelley. No surprise that this card is here. Obviously, Fleet Admiral Shelley is really quite good. This is another good target for Targon, by the way. As I say, Targon, not that bad. You Equinox Fleet Admiral Shelley, you feel pretty good about yourself. Yeah, obviously just a really strong card. This is about right to me, where it's like very close to 4. Like, because I would put this on the edge of like, this needs a nerf. It's right on that edge to me of like, oh, it's very close. Because sometimes you get this card, like if you've played Nami Zoe, sometimes you get this card and it's like, you only have like one other thing on board, or 2 other things on board, and like your opponent can actually deal with them. And you just feel like, man, this card isn't that good. Whereas when you get Nami, you never really feel that. With Nami, you always feel like this card's pretty nuts. With Shelley, it's like half the time you feel like, ooh, this card's not that good. But then the other half of the time you think, this card's nuts. So yeah, this one's on the edge, I think. Whereas Lost Soul, I would put like, this card definitely needs a massive change. Eye of the Dragon, like a bit of a weird, like out of left field. Like obviously the card is insanely strong. I've said that it needed to be nerfed in the past, but yeah, weird to see it on this list, because does any top tier deck play Eye of the Dragon at the moment? People must be running into a lot of Lee Sin that I am just not seeing. Because yeah, I mean, it's a really strong card, but I haven't really seen anyone play the card in quite some time. Twin is obviously no surprise. The card is nuts. And this I would put in like the nerf worthy discussion. 100%. Sharp Sight also in there, and we might as well include like Troll Chant and Ravenous Flock. Interesting inclusions of like these 4 cards. And what really surprised me, if you look at this list, like there is no Pokey Stick. Even though Pokey Stick is the card that is like the auto 3 include in every Bandle City deck, and this list had Bandle City as the best region, so you would think that the card that is an auto 3 of in what people think is the best region would be a problematic card. But instead it seems like we have a bunch of the other regions like auto include like super strong spells, and every region is sort of meant to have one. And that's why I think probably like a Pale Revert would be good. But every, region has like one super strong like spell, right? And we see like 4 of them on this list, which is a bit weird because like why aren't the others on this list then? I don't really know. A lot of them are like very good combat tricks. Maybe being a combat trick gets you on this list. I don't know. But anyway, I don't think that these 4. Well, Twin feels like on a different level to a lot of these other cards. Sharp Sight, like Twin it's just like slightly just pushing the edge. And to be fair, like old Pale used to really push the edge as well, like of just being that extra bit too good. So maybe you don't revert it. Maybe I'm talking stupid there, but Twin I would be a bit like, this card has enabled a lot. But anyway, going down the list, Minimorph, I already did a video on Minimorph and why I think that card needs to be nerfed. And it's not honestly for the power level. I actually think the power level is too high on this card. I wouldn't rate it this high at all. But more from like a sort of fun aspect, I would nerf this card. Octopus is, to me, crazy high. And the Bandle Tree is here as well. Now, as I say, there is like a kind of theme here of people must really hate playing against the Bandletree because, again, I don't really know what it's doing this high. Like, the deck to me is like fine. It's like a decent, low tier 1 deck. But, the way that this list would have you believe that it's like almost like a Zara with some of these ratings. So, bit of a surprise. Octopus, again, is like, it's okay. Like, half the time you basically have a 1-mana 1/1. At least that's what it felt like to me. I ended up cutting it from my Teemo list because I just thought, fine. Young Witch, I expected to be a bit higher, to be honest, because Young Witch, I think, is a crazy card that is just enabling a lot and has been enabling a lot for some time. Those Lulu Z decks and now, Lulu Poppy or whatever, whatever Demacia rally deck it is. Young Witch is just, crazy in those decks. And so I wouldn't be shocked if they reverted Young Witch, because between that and Twin, it kind of pushed things a bit too far. Then going down, we've talked about they aren't going to nerf Troll Chant and Flock, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. This one is shocking to me. Treasure Seeker is a way better card than Octopus. By the way, I'm just and it's not even close in my mind. Like, Treasure Seeker is way beyond Octopus by a country mile. Like, not even close. Don't even think about it. If I ask you what's a better card, Treasure Seeker or Octopus, someone in the comments try and convince me that Octopus is a better card than Treasure Seeker if you actually believe that. I'm challenging you to try and convince me, because I genuinely don't think I can be convinced. And I'm open to try and be convinced, but I am shocked that Treasure Seeker 1 is this low and Octopus is that high, because to me you have two 1-drops and one is just vastly superior to the other. If you don't hit something that says +2 cost on Octopus, the card is basically a 1-mana 1/1, in my opinion. But Treasure Seeker gives you a card that wins games often. That's a 1-drop and is also a 2/1. Karina Mastermind, I mean, I don't think they'd ever nerf this card. I think it just it's the finisher that Teemo needed, so I'm glad for its existence. And then we have Golden Aegis and Pursuit here, in the 3.6. The problem is how would you ever change those cards, right? Are you gonna make them both cost 1 more mana? I don't think so. So that's kind of a bit of a, you kind of never can touch these cards. Fallen Rider obviously is a pretty good card. Reborn Grenadier is a pretty decent card. So no surprise that they're here, but not really close to nerf worthy. And then Equinox and Merciless Hunter falling down. Clearly this is probably people thinking that, Targon is bad, so needs a good card like Equinox, which maybe is fair enough. And Merciless Hunter, I think, is probably fine where it is right now. Although you can see that Merciless Hunter used to be a 4.53, which honestly is probably a little low for what it should have been. But that's the video for today. I would love for your takes on some of this. I'm sure there's a lot that you agree with and disagree with, because obviously everyone's individual opinion on where this is would be all over the place. So a quick review. The region balance is fine. As I say, I just have it a little bit closer together. The champions, I think, are generally, most are in the correct tier, I would say. If you group them into tiers, I would say that most are pretty good. There is some big outliers for me, like Draven and Twisted Fate. Other than that, it's mostly decent. And controversial cards, again, I'm surprised, I'm a bit surprised that these two cards are at the very top. I can, lower, Aloof Travelers is kind of an annoying card to play against, so maybe that's explaining, why it's so high, because it's kind of annoying, to have, one of your cards discarded. People don't like that. So maybe that's explaining that. Mare, I really don't get. As I say, it's a strong card, don't get me wrong, but I was not expecting, a rating of this card needs to be nerfed. That really did surprise me. And there was someone here that I would have had a bit higher, like Treasure Seeker, like Young Witch. But that's it. That's the video for today. So thank you so much for watching, and I cannot wait to hear people slate me for my opinions on this. So do leave a comment down below on what you think. And I will be back with another Legends of Runeterra video, and I'll be streaming later today as well. Maybe as you're watching this, it will be a bit later in the day than I normally do, though. So come and hang out, and yeah, I will see you next time.